Good day all and welcome to my channel. Over the last few years we have seen the increases in violent storms and extreme droughts. Everybody blames global warming for these extreme weather conditions that plague our world in the present. But what is the reason for this warming of the climate that drive these extreme weather conditions? According to ancient records found in various sources, the Earth goes through natural cycles of warming and cooling. These natural cycles are driven by solar activities, the Earth's orbit around our Sun, and natural events that either trap solar energy or are releasing solar energies. One of the factors that would trap solar energy within the atmosphere are the amount of pollutants in the atmosphere. These atmospheric pollutants can come from a variety of natural sources. One that humans like to blame is cow farts that help to increase the amount of methane that is currently found in our atmosphere. But this is a ridiculous statement to make, as all life that consume food will have flatulence, and this all contribute to the amount of methane in the atmosphere. A study conducted revealed that every human flatulates approximately 2 liters a day. If you take that by the amount of people that reside on our little planet, humans contribute to the methane in the atmosphere at approximately 15 billion liters a day. That is a lot of methane that gets added per day just by one species. But it is not only the methane that gets blamed for global warming. Carbon dioxide also plays a role in trapping the solar energy within our little cocoon. But according to some scientists, humans have accelerated the carbon emissions and concentration in the atmosphere with the burning of fossil fuels in our industries, transport, and the generation of electricity. Yes, mankind have made their contribution to emitting carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, and we cannot deny this fact. But when one takes the amount of carbon dioxide emitted by one active volcano during one major eruption, the amount of carbon dioxide our industries emit seem like a fart in the wind. When a volcano erupts, a couple of billion tons of carbon dioxide can be emitted into the atmosphere in a very short period of time. There are some volcanoes that are currently continuously erupting, depositing massive amounts of carbon dioxide from within the Earth to the atmosphere on a daily basis. There are also underwater volcanic activities that are beyond our sight that deposit carbon dioxide into the atmosphere that are not even accounted for when even attempting to calculate the amount of carbon dioxide being deposited into the atmosphere on a daily basis by these natural events. But nature is a lot more complicated than the average Joe might think. There is a carbon cycle that helps to erode and filter the carbon from the atmosphere, and they use it with sunlight to produce their own energy. Now this is where the accelerated global warming comes in. With plants using carbon dioxide from the air to produce energy to grow, the more plants that gets removed from the land, the fewer entities there are to filter the carbon dioxide from the air. Over the last couple of centuries, masses of trees have been cleared to make space for farms and rural developments. An indication of accelerated global warming can be measured by the rate at which forests and grasslands are cleared for human use. Should the scientists open their minds a little broader and focus on the impact of land clearing and global warming over the last couple of centuries, they would see a visible correlation. Now we are getting to the major cause of the accelerated warming of the atmosphere. With more people on our world, we need more space to produce food for all these mouths to keep them alive. We clear a couple of million square miles every year around the globe to produce this amount of crops. And when the crops are not in production, many of these fields lay bare until the next planting season, when foliage will dominate the land again. But while the lands lay barren, the sun will bake the soil during the day and radiate it during the night time. With less foliage to absorb the emitted carbon dioxide, there is a buildup of carbon dioxide and other pollutants in the air and trap the radiated energy in the atmospheric envelope. So the cycle of warming continues day after day. Then when we plant our crops, the temperature fluctuations become smaller as the foliage reflect more heat than barren soil and rock. Any person would be able to tell you that the air in general is cooler when there are plants and trees around. But to keep these crops growing, we need to wet the soil, and in most cases some form of irrigation is used. When there are no rivers close by, we drain the underground water sources to provide the moisture that the crops need to grow. Farmers in most cases takes out more water from the underground sources than what nature can replenish, and the consequence is that the ground becomes drier and, when barren, would absorb more heat during the daytime. So with all this heat buildup, the water that are used to irrigate the crops will evaporate faster, and the farmer will need to irrigate more often to maintain the soil moisture for the crops. And when the underground sources dry up, the trees that might still be around could die due to the lack of groundwater. So when these trees die off, there would be less to absorb the carbon dioxide. It is a vicious cycle that gets worse as time goes on. When the fields lay barren between plantings, rain might fall, and because there are little to no protection on the topsoil, the fallen rain would form small streams that would flow so fast that very little gets absorbed by the ground to replenish the underground sources. These little streams also remove dissolved nutrients from the earth, increasing the need for fertilizers to maintain the crops when they are planted. Eventually the lands would be abandoned due to the soil becoming so poor or eroded that rehabilitation would become too expensive for the farmer. When the lands are abandoned, with the help of some animal species, grasses, and maybe trees would take root in this poor soil. But because there are no wild species around to trample the grasses, deposit fecal matter and urine, the soil would remain poor. When the grasses die down, the plant material would start to oxidize and no nutrients would be able to feed the soil. But some cattle farmers would see these grasses and seize the opportunity to graze their animals on these lands. Because the animals would trample the dead grasses and fertilize the soil with their fecal matter and urine, the soil might recover should these fields not be overgrazed by the cattle. It is for this reason that in the wild there are predators. The purpose of the predators is not only to take out the weak, but also to keep the herds moving, and this will allow the prevention of overgrazing of one specific area. When the herds move constantly, they will graze only as much as they can get till they are forced to move on by the predators. Now the bacteria in the fecal matter can get to work in breaking down not only the fecal matter, but also the trampled dead grasses that will make their nutrients easier to feed the soil again. So when there are soil coverage and animals that move all over them, the grasses will slow down any rains and more will be absorbed by the soil. This will not only cool down the air immediate above the fields through evaporation, it will mitigate the amount of energy from the sun that would be absorbed during the day and radiated during the night time. Nature have shown us how to mitigate the accelerated warming of the earth, but people are very stubborn and think that they know far better that natural practices that have been proven over the lifetime of our world. Now we come to the green movement that recently took the world by storm. Many industries have been created to mitigate the global warming threat. But these industries have been created for one purpose and one purpose only: money. And these green technology industries have poured billions into promoting their products that claim could save the world from our ever-warming climate. By sponsoring global warming events and using children to lobby governments like Greta Thunberg and the youth movement against global climate change, these industries can make more money without preventing the natural cycle of the world or tackling the real problem of accelerated global warming. While these industries flourish, the real cause just gets worse by the day. I can say that the Chinese have taken the first real steps in mitigating the accelerated climate change by using nature to slow the warming down. They have over the last couple of decades endeavored to green the wide open spaces with grasses and planted millions of trees to reduce their own carbon footprint. By reducing the amount of land that are exposed to the sun's radiation, less heat are radiated at night and the trees absorb more carbon from the atmosphere. The cycle would only be complete when the Chinese introduce grazing animals and predators to these rehabilitated areas. This way, nature would take over and allow these areas to not only reduce the carbon in the air, but would improve the health of the soil and its ability to retain moisture, thereby feeding the underground water sources for natural use during the dry spells. Humans have been working against nature for so long that they basically forgot to look at nature for the solution to the accelerated global warming problem. When we look at nature and learn from nature, this major event can be slowed down and give the animal and plant species the time to adapt to the new environmental conditions that would rule this world into the future. Unless we become part of the solution and work with nature to restore the grasslands and forests that we have chopped down for so long, we will not get a handle on the problems of extreme weather conditions in an ever-warming planet. We can do all this without using major technologies, but we will need advanced methods to produce more food for an ever-growing human population without expanding our footprint on the land. When the technologies that are currently available, we can actually produce more with less space, giving us more space to give back to nature and all its inhabitants. So what can be done to slow down the accelerated global warming? We should preserve our natural forests and plant new forests from indigenous trees, rehabilitate our ever-expanding desert regions and cover them with either forests or other plant materials to enrich the soil to retain more water. We should introduce not only grazing species to these rehabilitated green regions, but also predatory animals to prevent overgrazing and erosion. We should also give back to nature more than we take from it by utilizing modern technologies to produce the food that we require for our own survival. Should every person on this planet plant 2 trees a year, or sponsor at least 2 trees a year, we can have 15 billion extra trees a year. We should also reduce our dependence on extracting carbon-based products, as the excavation of these products cause another problem that we can do without if we are to stabilize our environment. Allow nature to replenish our water resources through filtration by slowing down the fast flows that remove topsoil and nutrients from the soil. Nature had the solutions to our ever-increasing problem of global warming all along. We just looked and believed all these green industries because they have been punting their message for so long, and while their products might help a little, nature is the solution to our problem. We need to become part of the solution and not remain part of the problem. It is up to each individual to resolve the problem and not rely on industries and governments to solve our problems. Use green technologies, but do not expect them to be the ultimate cure for the accelerated global temperature rise. Thank you for watching, and remember to like and subscribe for more videos.